This is a DIY report on a 2007 Honda CRV air conditioning compressor replacement. In this case, pretty sure it was just the clutch and coil that was bad. The compressor would not even try to engage, but it would spin freely. So I decided to replace the compressor as a unit with the clutch and coil attached. It was a lot actually simpler than I thought it would be at first, but of course I didn't know that. It took me a while to figure this out. Down inside you'll see the serpentine belt here, which has to come off early step. Actually, of course, disconnect the negative battery cable. Down inside, just sort of down inside there is a idler tension pulley that presses on the belt and makes the tension on the belt. It's a bit hard to see, but what I had to do to get to that was get underneath the car with a special tool, which I'll show you in a minute, that I had to buy because there's not a lot of clearance, and lever that tension or pulley to release the slack and then pull the belt off. After that, pretty much just disconnecting the compressor, which is at the very bottom beneath this hose that runs down all the way at the bottom, and I'll show you from the underside so you can get a better idea of that. Your charging ports are up here, high and the low, they're labeled. I'll show you that in a minute. This is the plastic trim piece that has to come off the bottom of the car, this right here, so that you can get access to the compressor. Compressor is going to look like that. The pulley on it and the clutch plate on the end here. See how this spins no problem on this compressor. Even though I had voltage here measured at these wires, the clutch wouldn't engage. So I assumed that this the coil inside here was bad. On the compressor, the ports here, suction port here, which is where you'll fill the oil when you do that. I'll talk about that later. And then the other side right here, where the other hose hooks up to it. The bottom plastic piece I mentioned is held on with these clips, these push clips. There are some on this top piece right here that covers the radiator. You can see 1, 2, 3. They make a special tool that can grab them, but if you just get a flat bladed screwdriver and pry up the center part, it'll pop up like that, and then you can pull the whole thing out. When you put them back in, it's the same process. You push this down into the hole like this, and then when you push this pin in, it'll snap into place. This is the tool that I wound up buying to get the serpentine belt off. If you have a very long wrench, you can get it on there. If you have a breaker bar or something, you could connect to it, but I didn't have a long enough one. My wrench was about this long. There's no way you're going to do it with that. This was $20 or $25. It's kind of a waste. It's got little detachable wrench heads on it. This is a 14 millimeter, which is the right size for I think Hondas in general. And I'll show you where you apply this underneath the car. Underneath the car, you see the new compressor here, and if you look up inside, you see the small pulley just below the bright spot right there. That's what you're going to want to get. It's the one just above that, just above into the back of the car right there. That one right there, you want to get that wrench on and lever it away from the tension of the belt, so towards the back of the car. That'll loosen the belt so you can slip it off the crank pulley right here. Now we're looking at the other side of the compressor, from directly underneath the license plate, front license plate area of the car. You can see the electrical connection with the little red spot right over there. You do need a little screwdriver to pull up on the tab and separate those two. And then you have the pressure lines here, which runs into a connection there, and you can see a shiny bolt sticking out of the connection there, and with a nut on it. You'll remove that after you, of course, evacuated the system. And then on the other side, the other pressure line, the low pressure side, is right through there, kind of behind the rubber hose. You can see it running in, and there is that one actually is the screw that goes down inside and taps into that. That's the backside hole right there. So you can kind of see it a little bit better. You can see the screw head there. And so those two lines will, you'll take the nut off of the one and the screw off of this one, and it'll just sort of, you can pull on it and kind of wedge it back and forth, and it'll pop out. And then you'll see there are 4 bolts to remove the compressor. You can see them right here. They're the darker rusty part instead of the brand new compressor. 1, 2, 3, and 4 right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and they come out relatively easily. They are torqued on pretty good, and yours might be rusted a little bit. The only catch is you will need a sort of a flexible socket connector to get around the corner a little bit. It's a little hard to get on these two, in particular on the left side, straight, unless you take off pieces on the bottom, which I didn't need to do that to get that out. Once you disconnect the bolts, the compressor will just fall right through between the frame steel here and the underside of the radiator. Will just pull right through. You'll kind of have to drop it through. There may be oil in the compressor, so just try not to sort of turn it completely upside down. So again, once you get the compressor out, I tried to measure how much oil was inside the compressor to help decide how much to keep in the new compressor. I drained it through here into a little measured shot glass thing I found at the hardware store to measure. I only got about a half ounce out of mine old compressor, and you might have to turn the compressor here in order to actually pump out some of this. So sort of hold it in the air with this facing down over the glass and sort of turn it to pump like that. And I got about a half an ounce out. The new one had quite a bit. Had like 2.5 ounces, 3 ounces in it. I actually drained about half of that. Actually, I drained all of it and then put about 1 ounce of compressor oil, PAG 46 compressor oil, back in. It had some UV dye in it just in case there were any leaks. Of course, the vacuum pump here and the hoses, that's DIY, so why buy them? I was able to find a set at AutoZone. You have to buy it and then you can return it within 90 days and get your money back. So it was a pretty nice set, had everything I needed on the gauges, the negative pressure vacuum readings there in green, which you want it to be able to go down to 30 inches of mercury, and then the vacuum pump itself. On this model, you hook up to the suction here to the yellow hose. There's a lot of detail about how to do AC and how not to blow yourself up while you're doing it. I won't repeat all that. I'm not an AC tech. But don't open the red high side valve. Keep that closed off all the way. Turn to the right, closed off. Anytime the car is on and the compressor is running, you have to keep that shut, otherwise the high pressure could come back through into the container you're charging from and blow it and pop it. To get to the, I forgot to mention earlier, to get to the low side connection on the compressor, I actually had to come around to the top of the engine compartment and feed this ratchet with an extension, 2 extensions, one swivel a little bit, and then the full swivel joint on the end with a 8mm, I think it was 8mm socket on it, and feed that down past the alternator and get a hold of the nut that's down in there on on the screw that's down in there, kind of right in this region. Can't really see it very well, to get the low side pressure line off the old alternator and the new one on. Other little details I used, had to buy this, couldn't rent it. This is just the tap valve for the refrigerant cans. I tried to find the regular 134A without any of the sealants or leak stop stuff in there. They sell 340 gram cans. This card takes 465 grams is what I found online. So then I used a scale, kitchen scale here, to measure how much refrigerant had actually come out of the can in order to when to shut off the valve on the hose set and stop the flow of refrigerant. You can find the info on that online, but just want to show you 2 cans is plenty, and you'll have a little left over, of course, in the second can, so just close that valve off and don't take it off or it'll all leak out. And then use the scale there to measure how much comes out. Finally, it took me about 30 minutes or so to charge the system with, just gas method on the low side. Just being patient and not being in a hurry. You can see the grams tick off, maybe 1 gram every couple seconds or something like that. And the pressures were somewhere around 200 psi on the high side when I was charged up, and it was hot today. It was close to 195 today. That's the story. Hope it was useful. Again, there's the parts and pieces, the vacuum pump, the socket extension, and you'll need a couple different size sockets. I had to buy the 14 millimeter tool for getting the serpentine belt off, a couple cans of refrigerant, the tap valve, the hose set, and vacuum pump I mentioned already, taking off the plastic under piece. You should, if your AC system's been open for any time, you should consider replacing the receiver dryer filter desiccant bag. It's down. I decided not to do that. It's not that old a car, and take my chances. Wasn't that hard to do this, so worst case I have to do it again. It's underneath the on the right side, the driver's side of the condenser. There's a little, you can't quite see it, there's a tube over here on the side, and you'd have to take the condenser off, I believe, to change that filter element out. More work than I felt like doing. Just make sure that you do, I did run the vacuum for over an hour, pull out whatever moisture was in there, and it actually sat overnight in vacuum. And then I vacuumed it out again another hour the second day. So hopefully we got all the moisture out of there. That might help with that part.